When you solely rely on sales to come from visibility that you generate from other people's platforms, you are going to have lead leak because not everyone is going to buy when they first experience you somewhere else. And the solution is in building your own audience and literally taking control of nurturing and building relationships with your potential buyers. You are listening to Amplify Your Success podcast, episode 427. And today, let's take a peek behind a shift many experts need to make, and that is why you need to build your own audience to maintain cash flow and profitability. You ready for this? Let's get started. Welcome to the Amplify Your Success podcast. Get ready to ramp up your revenue, amplify your impact, and make your mark in the world. This is the show for experts, thought leaders, and service professionals who want to shatter their limits and achieve that next level. You're going to find out from other experts and influencers how they made it. Now, let's get amplified. Hey there, inspired entrepreneurs and ripple making experts. It is Melanie Benson, your host. And today I want to talk about the importance of building your own audience. This is kind of emerged from a lot of conversations I've been having with people who were applying for Authority Accelerator. And also just some conversations I've been noticing in the social media space about why they're frustrated with a lack of traction, a lack of results. And when I would dig into it a little bit, I was realizing, they're doing a lot of the right things, but they're missing one key factor in their ability to move interested leads or prospects into buyers. So we're going to talk about how to fix that today. And I am excited about this episode because this is something that I think so many people are neglecting in their business these days. And oh my gosh, I know you get a lot on your plate. There's so many things that you have to do. I get it. But what I know is going to move the needle for you as a ripple maker, as somebody who wants to make a big impact, is doing the right things, the things that move the needle, and focusing on those and then letting go of all that other stuff that might be working for other people, but maybe it's just not really right for you right now. This brings up a resource that I've been getting some rave reviews about. The people that are taking my new Ripple Makers quiz have been saying, like, wow, okay, this was pretty illuminating. And all of a sudden I knew exactly what wasn't working or what I had been neglecting in my own business. So I put this quiz together because I wanted to create a place where you could kind of self-assess. Like if you want to make a big impact, you want to be making big waves with your work in the world and your message, what is going to move the needle for you? And maybe where do you need to focus right now so that you can have that greater impact and your message can be amplified and reaching new people? So if you want to take the quiz, head over to melaniebenson.com/quiz. It'll take you maybe 2 to 3 minutes to complete it. And then be sure to watch for some of the tips and insights that are going to come your way. I'll help unpack those results. And if it feels aligned, there'll be an opportunity for us to book in a call so that you can figure out exactly what you need to focus on right now. Now, let's talk about building your own audience. So as I was mentioning, one of the things that I'm noticing is that people are following the prescription, if you will. I need to be visible. I'm getting on podcasts. I've bought this fancy podcast booking agency, or spending a bunch of money on PR, or I'm maybe even like doing social media all the time, but my results are not matching the level of effort. And there's a different lens into your visibility that's really important to get. And that is, your visibility is one piece of the bigger puzzle. Your results may come from somebody who sees you and is inspired to quickly take action. I call them fast action takers, and they do exist. But most of your sales, most of your results are going to come when you nurture those connections after that initial spark. So I know how frustrating it is when you're out there and you're pouring your heart and soul into all this content and then you're like, it's not going anywhere. People aren't signing up. They're not actually doing anything once they sign up for whatever your first thing is, your lead magnet. I have seen the solution to this is to really build and cultivate your own audience. You have to focus on, I build a thriving community of people who believe in what I do, who are interested in the solutions I provide, or they're stuck in the problems that I solve, but maybe they're just not ready yet. And what's interesting is, having been in business for 24 years now, I've had a list and a community that I've been cultivating for years. Now, I've shifted gears enough that some of those people probably won't find what I do relevant today, but a lot of people do. One of the ladies who signed up for Authority Accelerator has been following me for 15 plus years. And she told me, she said, I knew someday I was going to work with you. And I just knew now was the time. And I'm not saying you have to wait 15 years for your best buyers, but this happens a lot for me. People that have been bonding with me and really learning from me and building trust with me long enough that when the time is right and the problem they have is too big, and or they want the solution more than they're willing to stay stuck, then they'll move into action. So by the end of today's episode, what I hope we can do is get clear why you need to build your own audiences, why maybe you have, like what's getting in the way of that, and where to find these people that can start to come into your orbit and connect with you in your community. So let's start with why borrowing people's audiences isn't going to be enough to make sales at the level I know you want to make them. Trust me, I am a huge fan of borrowing other people's platforms, their podcasts, finding win-win collaborations with my peers. It's a solid strategy, but it's not enough. It's not going to solve your cash flow problem all on its own. Now, part of that is we've seen a bit of shift in listener levels, and people are very bombarded with content online. So what used to really just be, hey, let's slide into the DMs and have a conversation, it's not quite as effective anymore for most people. There might be some people that's still working. What we want to do is look at those borrowed audiences as where the spark emerges. Think of it like this, and it's kind of a weird analogy, but let's say you want to like you're going fishing, right? And your pond doesn't have any fish in it. So you're going to go fish in some other people's ponds. Okay? And then some of those fish are going to follow you and they're going to jump into your pond because they're like, "Hey, I like the water there. That's really aligned for me." Or the water it's like has more guppies or whatever in them, right? And so the whole idea of borrowing audiences is to take an opportunity to borrow the people that have been gathered and where that spark is, and there's a complementary opportunity, there's synergy between you and that host, then they come and want to be a part of your community. Okay. So we're basically exponentially growing audiences here. But if you only focus on you're going to borrow their audience and hope those people buy, and if they don't buy, guess what? It's over. The connection stops the minute you get off the stage, the minute the episode ends, if you haven't inspired them to move into some kind of connection in your pond, in your community. So the key opportunity here is to get that you want to inspire people wherever you're being visible to come build a relationship with you, to take advantage of some free thing or some no-brainer opportunity, get your book, whatever. And now you're going to build the relationship with them. Okay, so you're not just generating leads. I want to really make this clear. You are inspiring people to want to build a relationship with you beyond that initial connection point. For some people, this is about community. For some people, you're sparking a movement and you're going to build, this group of people that are just as excited about it as you are. And some people, it's just really like you're cultivating and nurturing potential buyers until they are ready to solve that problem. Whatever that is, own it. But get that you have to nurture it. Okay, so these sales aren't going to happen just because they get on your list. Your email nurture sequence may spark a few people. Like I just had that happen last week where somebody heard me on a podcast episode. They They took the quiz actually. They were really like, oh yeah, this is me. They booked a consultation, joined my program. Okay. It happened within like a 2 week period. But that's the exception, not the rule these days. So we need to look at how you build and nurture your audience. There are three type of audiences I want you to consider building. And you may have all three of them, or maybe you're just going to focus on one. Either way is good. The one that nobody can ever take from you unless you stop paying for your CRM or your email system is your own email list. Okay, when you inspire people in that first touch point, whether it's on social media or it's on someone else's stage or you're doing a podcast interview, right? Or whatever that thing is, and you inspire them to get on your list by offering something of value, we call that a lead magnet or a freemium, then you are literally building a list. Now, here's where I see people fall apart and they're leading, sorry, they're having lead leak that's destroying their profit potential. And that is you're getting them on your list and then you're doing nothing else. Maybe you've got a few emails in your sequence and you're like bonding with them, but then nothing happens ongoing. So what happens? Well, they forget they're there, and then all of a sudden you email them one day and they're like, I don't know who this person is, and they jump off your list, or they're hungry for more and they're like, where did Susan go? Like, I love that thing she did, but I've not heard from her again. So your email community, your email list is one of the audiences you're building. This is something you can control. This is something that you can nurture and build a community, a movement, and stay in touch with people that maybe aren't ready now, but will want to work with you at some point. Okay, so email list, social platform. That's the second one. Now, before you go, I hate social media, which I hear from a lot of people, and I get. Your social media platform can actually be a place where you are stealthily building a rapport and credibility and influence with people who are interested in you, but didn't quite want to jump on your list, right? So, what happens for me a lot of times, and I see this with other clients that go through the program, is when you get very intentional about how you leverage your social media and how you stay connected via social media, is you're letting people know who either A, may or may not be on your list, or B, may not be reading your email because they're bombarded with other emails, or they heard you somewhere, they followed you on email, or sorry, on social, but they never went any farther. And so that's the opportunity, is to kind of replicate the nurturing you do in your email list via social. And if you have connected with me on my personal Facebook profile, not my page, my profile, then you know how powerful that is and how oftentimes when I am getting ready to do what I call a sales trigger event, a masterclass or challenge or whatever we're doing, I'll be sharing it on social and I'll get a ton of people who will jump back into my list, even if they'd unsubscribed before or we'd lost touch, simply because I've been nurturing the connections there for a really long time. And so I have different ways I use different social platforms. Now, there's another level to social platform that's working really well for some people, and that is having a group on Facebook. There are people that are doing this very well. And then there are people who are just completely trashed by it. They're like, it's so much work. I'm not getting any traction. So if you go into this subset of social platform, just know it does take a very intentional strategy. And, there are ways to do it, but you're going to have to figure out how to build a movement or a loyal community in that group and engage people really well. The third type of audience that I think is really valuable is your podcast or show. Look, if you've been listening to the show for a long time, I consider you part of my Amplify community. You're an amplifier. You want to amplify results in your business through your message, the work you do in the world, and you keep showing up. And thank you. I don't take that lightly. And as a matter of fact, I really treasure hearing from people, oh my gosh, I've been listening to that episode, or I loved when you talked with that person, right? So this is another way you can continue to build community. You can spark your movement. You can create a loyal fan base. That's how some people might look at it. And if we look at these three types of audiences, they, as you can probably imagine, they actually complement each other very, very well. Now, if you know me at all, you know I use all three. Some people are like, that's too much. So you can pick one or two that complement each other and you can really stay consistent with. If you're only going to pick the one that you feel is the best use of your superpowers. Now, something to consider about two and three, social media and your podcast or show. You are relying on technology you don't own. You are relying on algorithms and things that you can't control. As a matter of fact, we just have seen a huge shift in Facebook's performance. We've seen a lot of the platforms ebb and flow, and what used to work 6 months ago isn't working now. And so there's a lot more that you have to stay on top of when you're leveraging platforms that you can't control. But you can control how much you email your list, and you can control what you do to build relationship with the people in your email community. So, as you probably guess, I am a fan of all three, and I think those are three that everybody can focus on. Just if you got a lot going on and you're like, I can't do all three, pick the one that can move the needle the most. Now, how do you build your own audience? Okay, so where are you going to find these people? How are you going to inspire them to come to you? First of all, let's go back to one of my tried and true, what I think works every time. If you're doing your topics and your talking points right, and you've got a lighthouse message, and that is being a guest on other people's platforms, whether that's speaking at events, doing podcast interviews, being a guest on shows. You literally can infuse 50 to 100 people every month at a minimum if you're really strategic and intentional and you've mastered the art of the message. Now, I don't think just relying on being a guest on other people's platforms is enough. So secondly, I think we have to add in strategic partnering. And this is where I see one and two go really well together, because being a guest on someone else's platform is a good way to date a peer to see how the synergy is. And moving it to the next level might be, hey, I've got this thing going on. I've got this book that we're launching. I'm doing an event. I'm looking for speakers, right? Whatever. Uh, how can you collaborate with them? How can you strategically promote each other to share your audiences that hopefully are aligned with both parties and can complement each other's offers? So strategic partnering with peers, to me, it is the highest performing. Being a guest is easier to pull off. Strategic partnering has a higher payoff, and it might take a little bit more getting your ducks in a row to be able to pull it off. As a matter of fact, I will link up in the show notes a episode I did recently of being promotion worthy. Like, what does it take to be the in-demand collaboration and strategic partner with peers? Because it might help you to revisit that. The third thing you can do to build your own audience is be active on social media, but you don't have to be active everywhere. Be active on platforms where your ideal clients are active. So when I take people through Authority Accelerator, one of the things we do is we look at their content strategy and how they're positioning their authority in their marketplace. One of the things that we look at is, where is your content and your offering going to be a no-brainer or a much needed solution? If you're in the corporate market or you deal with more professionals, LinkedIn, hands down, is really good. Now, that doesn't mean it's the only thing that's there. I'm seeing it work more and more, especially for collaborations and strategic partnering. But LinkedIn is great if in the B2B market or the professional level. Facebook. I'm not a huge fan of pages, although I know some people have really built empires there. Facebook profile and or your Facebook groups. Okay, so I think what works really well there is more B2C. Again, it's very much about who you've built relationships with there. So it's about being very intentional with who you connect with on Facebook. A lot of people just follow their family and their close friends. And I do have family and friends that are connected with me there, but I always warn them, like, yeah, you're going to probably want to ignore about 90% of what you see me post. But they kind of get a kick out of, like, oh, Melanie's doing this. You'll see my mom once in a while and my aunt pop in and go, oh, I love this. I love them. But Obviously, they're not my ideal clients. So when you're on Facebook, just know this is very much about connections. Who did you meet at an event? Are these people that are your peers that you can collaborate with, or are they potential leads that you met somewhere and you connected, but they never did anything? So Facebook kind of has that friend zone effect if you are not continually being present to your content and what's in it for them that might move the needle. So Facebook's tricky, but it is really one of my favorite platforms. Instagram. Instagram's been changing a lot. I always tell people, look, if that's the only profile you do, good luck. There's a lot to keep on top of there. But what I see really moves the needle the most there are wellness, creativity, transformation, money, law of attraction, that kind of stuff. Reels continue to perform well there. So reels tend to be the predominant content that works on Instagram. And then last, Threads, which is Instagram's Twitter. And long story, I used to be very active on Twitter. It was my top performing platform. I personally chose to move out of it a couple years ago. And Threads has kind of become an interesting sister type energy there where it's all about like having short mini blog posts that if you like to write and you love connecting, you might actually find Threads very intriguing. It's growing at the speed of light. It is not for everybody. It does require a bit of nurturing. I'm testing it right now and I dip my toe in there and figure things out. So I think social media can be really helpful to attract people who are curious and want to take that next step, and they're going to engage with you more. There's a lot more to social media, but that's the highlights there. Now, a couple things on social media. This is not about a one-way kind of like always shouting into the void of, hey, look at me, look at me. A lot of people got stuck in that influencer model where you're just spewing stuff and there's no engagement, there's no conversation, there's no connection. That's what moves the needle in social media. Okay, so if you can't do it personally, you need to get somebody to do it for you if you're going to be on social. You want to engage on other people's content, get them inspired to come to yours. Leverage the features that work on those individual platforms. Okay, don't just post and send these one-way transmissions of like, look how cool I am. Create content and really like think about like what would be interesting to them. Now, there's layers and layers I could go into around this, including like your unique messaging archetype. And there's ways that, I like to infuse your Lighthouse message into everything you do. But at a minimum, think about your social media as a place where it's not about getting them to buy. It's about getting them to want to build the relationship with you on your email list and beyond. And at a minimum, you're nurturing. Couple other things that are worth mentioning. I'm not going to go too deep into them. And one of them is paid ads. There's a lot of ways to do paid ads from Facebook, Google. You can do podcast platform ads. That's nothing I do, but it is there. A lot of people still really like them and find them valuable. So it's worth considering ads to bump things up, but you need to know what you're doing. Otherwise, you're going to spend a lot of money and not see any results. And then last is organic search. And I think we oftentimes neglect this. This has been a big part of my success early on, probably not as much outside of the podcast and YouTube these days. But if you're really good at SEO or you want to get somebody to SEO your site, doing blogging that's SEO rich, getting YouTube with good keywords, really looking at the SEO quality of your podcast and your episodes is really helpful. So keep in mind that people are searching on all different platforms from Google to LinkedIn for what you do. And the better you are at recognizing the search terms they're using and you set yourself up to be found, this can be really valuable. So again, remember, it's not about do they buy from me there? It's about can I inspire them to want to come into my orbit and continue to stay connected so I can nurture the relationships. It's a little bit of a long game, right? So now we've looked at like, okay, why you need to have your own audience, what three types of audiences are, and how you might find people or be present in a way that people are going to come to you. What do you do when they're in your community? Okay, so I think it's important to remember people don't join a list. I freaking hate when I get emails saying email blast. I'm like, oh my God, why are we blasting people? Please do not use that term. People join transformation. They lean into inspiration. They want to be part of a movement. They want to be part of community. So the more you can create that feel in your email list, in your social media, in your podcast, whatever audience you're building, or all of it, and weave that thread through, the more they want to stay. What I see happening, and this is a hard thing to figure out sometimes, is people, they come because they want something, but they stay because there's something that keeps them energized, inspired, and curious, right? And if they're not staying, that might mean you're missing that component. So be consistent. Whatever you're doing, be consistent. Once a week, once a day, whatever it is, find the thing that works for you. And then remember that just sending emails or doing podcast episodes or posts isn't enough to get people to buy. That's nurturing. That's building the relationship. That's continuing to inform and educate who you are, what your credibility is, and why people want to continue to learn from you. But you got to move them into something I call a sales trigger. You got to have an event. You got to create something where there's a very specific beginning and end where they can choose whether or not now is the time. One of the examples that I talk about all the time is I host usually a quarterly live masterclass. Once a year, we usually have an event of some kind, right? So there are things we do that take it out of the nurturing and into, hey, are you going to choose to solve this problem now? And if you're not doing that, this is probably why you are not seeing enough sales. Okay, so know that you have to guide people into making decisions. This is so big. This is actually one of the trainings I do with my client base, because once we've got the visibility in place, they're like, okay, now what? Like, people didn't buy off the podcast. Like, great. Like, remember, those are the outliers. Those are the unique ones. Your job is to give people an opportunity to say yes by moving them through a sequence of opportunities to solve a problem in a specific way. So, I'm really curious how this is landing for you today. Do you already have an audience and now you're going to double down maybe on one of the other audiences? Is this new information for you and now you're ready to really go to the next level and build your own audience? Or do you need some help? You're not really sure where to go. Building audience is so much easier when you're really clear who it's for, what you do, what your value is, and have your sequences and your things in place that help people choose you to solve their problem. I highly recommend that you do the quiz. And if you're really like, oh my gosh, this is speaking to me, and you want to jump right into exploring solutions, go check out my Authority Accelerator program. I'll link it up in the show notes. We are taking applications for the next round, and this could be the game changer for you this year. Thanks for tuning in today, Amplifier. We're going to keep this conversation going, and I want to hear from you how you're going to amplify your authority and make a greater impact. Before you go, please take a minute to give our show and our guests some love over on your favorite podcasting platform. Subscribe, rate, and review. Leave your full name, and I'll spotlight you and your authority on social media.